Good afternoon, everyone. At the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Srinivas and the entire Cyclops team for having invited me to this beautiful coastal city of Vizag to deliver this lecture. When I was given this topic, I was a little confused whether I'm supposed to talk on BPPV or on migraine, because both topics are quite elaborate, and what I have done is I've tried to make it more concise and put the things in a precise way in a nutshell. So let's go ahead. The first mention of vertigo in migraine was discussed way back in 19th century by Living. After that, there have been many studies which link migraine and vertigo. And it has been found that vertigo is present in migrainous patients almost in 50 to 70% of the cases. Now, migraine is an episodic disorder which has headache as its most important feature, along with other features which involve the autonomic, gastrointestinal, or the neurological systems. The patients with migraine-related vestibulopathy present with a myriad of vertigo symptoms. They could be like, they say that they feel everything is spinning, rotatory type of a vertigo, which is like a true vertigo. They may even complain of imbalance, unsteadiness, lightheadedness, or a combination of all these. So it becomes a little difficult. Then, moreover, vertigo attacks in migraine-related vertigo may not be always associated with headache or aura. So this is how the vertigo attacks may be present in the patient with migraine. So there might be vertigo attacks without headache in vestibular migraine, as in the BPV of childhood, benign recurrent vertigo in the adults, or the basilar migraine. Vertigo may present as a major feature in case of basilar migraine. Moreover, a patient who is going through the attack of migraine, meaning having a headache or having an aura, may be also feeling dizzy at that time. That is just as a facultative feature. And in addition, there may be patients who have migraine. At the same time, they may be having other vestibular-related disorders like Meniere's disease, BPPV, etc. I'm not going to go into the details of classification of migraine as such, but I'll just highlight a few points about the diagnostic criteria for vestibular migraine as put forth by the Barani Society and the International Headache Society. It mentions that for a definite vestibular migraine, what is required is 5 episodes of vestibular symptoms, I'll come to that later, lasting for at least 5 minutes to 72 hours, with a history of migraine, and one or more of the migrainous features, like unilateral pulsating headache, phonophobia, photophobia, etc. There's a criteria for probable vestibular migraine. Again, it includes 5 episodes of vestibular symptoms, lasting for 5 minutes to 72 hours, and one of the 2 criteria, B or C, that is either a migraine history or migrainous features. And what are these vestibular symptoms included in this classification? Spontaneous vertigo, which could be an internal vertigo, external vertigo. It could be a positional vertigo, visually induced vertigo, head motion induced vertigo, head motion induced dizziness. And other forms of dizziness have not yet been included in this classification of vestibular migraine. It also says that the other causes of vestibular disorders or vertigo should be eliminated, maybe by investigation, so on and so forth. But now, in addition to these patients, or there are a number of patients who come to us with episodic vertigo, and they have the vertigo lasting for less than 5 minutes and maybe more than 72 hours. They have symptom-free intervals in between, and they may have vertigo along with ear symptoms, no ear symptoms, CNS symptoms, no CNS symptoms, and no headaches. So where do we classify them? So it has been proposed that they could be cases of possible vestibular migraine, and they warrant a therapeutic trial with anti-migraine therapy. So when a patient of episodic vertigo comes to us, the question is, Are we going to, episodic vertigo in a migrainous patient, when he comes to us, are we going to treat the vertigo in a migrainous patient or the migraine in a vertiginous patient? Now we come to the paroxysmal positional vertigo. Now we are going to be more specific. So when we have a patient with typical paroxysmal positional vertigo, what is our differential diagnosis? First is BPPV. We think of vestibular migraine, orthostatic hypotension, and less likely cerebellopontine lesions. Now we try to relate migraine and BPPV. When I was given this topic, I went through a lot of literature. There are not too many studies being specific about migraine and BPPV. Yes, there are studies on migraine and vertigo, but typically about BPPV, there are not many studies, but there were some studies which showed that the history of migraine was 3 times more common in those patients who were diagnosed as idiopathic BPPV. Moreover, it has also been postulated that in the patients of BPPV who are not responding, especially the cupulolithiasis type, who are not responding to your properly done liberatory maneuvers, are likely to respond to anti-migraine therapy. So the question is, do migraine and BPPV share a pathological correlation? Is there a similar basis? So now we go to the pathomechanism of migraine itself. The older theory of migraine was it's a cerebral vasomotor disorder which causes the aura because of arterial vasoconstriction and the headache because of the extracranial vasodilation. But this theory, this simple theory is no longer accepted. What is now proposed by the neurologists is that it is a neuronal dysfunction. And what happens over here? There's abnormal neural activity in the brainstem centers, especially the autonomic centers like the dorsal raphe nucleus, the locus coeruleus, which results in the release of some vasoactive substances like serotonin, substance P, etc. These cause a sterile inflammation around the dural blood vessels, which leads to the headache. At the same time, this also results in the decrease in the blood flow to certain areas like the basilar artery territory. So this can explain the vasospasm. And this also may result in certain infarcts of the temporal or the occipital lobes. Now I'm trying to, since I'm supposed to speak on orthostatic hypotension also, I'm just trying to apply that mechanism to orthostatic hypotension. It has been found, it has been documented that orthostatic hypotension is also quite common in the patients with migraine. What could be the reason? This is just hypothetical, okay? So maybe if we apply the same pathomechanism to orthostatic hypotension. What is orthostatic hypotension? It is a sudden drop in the blood pressure on erect posture, that is 20 millimeters of systolic, 10 millimeters of diastolic within 3 minutes of standing. What happens here? It's the total, loss of autonomic nervous system control, or the reflex just doesn't work. So what happens? There's a venous blood pooling in the lower limbs, resulting in the cerebral hypoperfusion, and that causes that faintiness or the dizziness which the patient complains of. Now we could apply that same, the loss of that autonomic nervous control, which happens at the brainstem level, to this as well in the patients with migraine. But we have to also take into account that patients of migraine who are already on pharmacotherapy may also have this orthostatic hypotension as a result of as a side effect of those drugs. So we have to think about it. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of how you diagnose orthostatic hypotension and all that, of course, BP, and then there's the tilt table test. Actually, we don't do it ourselves. We generally refer it to the physicians who would do it better. Now, we try to apply the pathomechanism of migraine to that of vertigo. Now, how is the vertigo in migraine caused? There are two theories. The proponent of whether the vertigo in migraine is of a central origin or a peripheral origin. What Thomas Brand has put forth is that it is of a central origin. Now, again, that same neuronal dysfunction theory is put forth over here. The brainstem dysfunction, which occurs, may also involve the vestibular nuclei, which happen to be in the floor of the fourth ventricle in the brainstem. This causes a vestibular tone imbalance, leading to the rotational type of vertigo. Okay? There are certain other authors or researchers who have put forth that it could be of a peripheral origin. How? Because basilar migraine, it causes a decreased blood flow to the various arteries, especially the ICA. Now, anterior inferior cerebellar artery, we know that it ends with the internal auditory artery, which happens to be the end artery supplying the inner ear. So this leads to labyrinthine ischemia, and therefore the vestibular dysfunction, leading to the peripheral type of a vertigo or even instability. Now, I come back to the topic of BPPV in migraine. We all know about the etiology of BPPV. We all know that it occurs with the advancing age. Head injury could be a cause, then vestibular neuritis is known, ear surgeries, different surgeries. Other risk factors are hyperlipidemia, hypertension, diabetes mellitus, etc. But 50% of the cases, we label them as idiopathic. And as I said, literature says that migraine is more common in these patients. So if we apply the same thing to BPPV, now what is the pathology occurring in BPPV? We all know it is something causes the otoconia of the neuroepithelium of the macula to disintegrate. They somehow find their way into the semicircular canals, either as free-floating particles, okay, as cupulolithiasis, or as canal lithiasis. Cupulolithiasis is when these particles go and stick to the cupula and they give rise to the symptoms and signs of BPPV. Now, if we were to apply the migraine theory over here, the pathomechanism, the basilar migraine causes episodic vasospasms. There are repeated episodes, and this leads to ischemia, leading to the degeneration of the macular otolith. Then otoconial debris is formed because of the disintegration. This finds its way into the semicircular canals, and there you have the symptoms and signs of BPPV. So it is not far-fetched to say this. There are not many studies really supporting this, but this could be a food for thought. Then there is this one study which I came across, which is, I think, the only population-based study. It's a nationwide population-based study carried out in Taiwan. It was published in the journal in 2015. And they have found that there are certain risk factors of BPPV in the patients with migraine. They found that those patients who are above the age of 40, who have hypertension, COPD, coronary artery disease, cerebrovascular disease, and also they considered those patients who had more visits to the neurologist for their migraine issues. These were the patients who had higher chances of developing BPPV. They also found that the cure rate of BPPV in these patients, the patients who have migraine as well as BPPV, is less. And they found that it is more common in the females, and also that the patients with migraine had twice the greater risk of developing BPPV. So when a patient with rotational vertigo comes to us, which is paroxysmal and positional, it's a challenge. Because now we are talking about migraine, BPPV, there are other causes, so there's an intermixing. So the question is, are we going to treat the BPPV or are we going to treat the migraine? So we need to think of a protocol, how we would go about this. Of course, patients of vertigo comes to us, we are going to do a detailed neurotological history taking. But here we go more into details of the personal and family history as well. Try to find out if there is any family history of migraine, personal history, look for any trigger factors which we know about in migraine. And various precipitating factors could be loss of sleep, stress, maybe menses in women, the use of OC pills. All these things have to be considered. So this history is also important. And one more clue could be, the patients with migraine, they have this sensitivity to motion sickness. So ask for the history of motion sickness. And also the personality of the patient could be taken into account. This reminds me of my friend. She was a physiotherapist and working in the same institute. I knew that she had this history of migraine, but at least twice or thrice she has come to the casualty with vertigo. She has had the migraine history also in the past, she comes with vertigo. And I'm given a call, I go down there, and I actually see the rotational type of, nystagmus and vertigo in her. Then at that time, I thought, okay, it looks like BPPV. And I did the positional maneuvers. She seemed okay after that. And after a few days, after about 1 month or so, again she has the same problems. But then she was on anti-migraine treatment, then she would be okay. So now it makes me think, this is about 8 years back what I'm talking about. But that time we didn't talk much about migraine and BPPV and association. So now it starts me thinking, maybe it was only the migraine associated signs which were presented. Like what they say about migraine, vestibular migraine is like it's a chameleon. Rang badalta hai. It can present in any way. So that's about my friend. Now, when such a patient comes to us, when we hear that, okay, the patient is having vertigo in certain positions, that is what your patient is telling you. So you, of course, have to do your neurological examination. But what is suggested, if you suspect BPPV, first you do the positioning test. Because repeated other tests may, cause the fatigability and you may lose the signs while doing the test later. So you do your positioning test. So you will do the popular Dix-Hallpike test for the posterior canal BPPV. You will see the typical signs. If it is posterior canal BPPV, you will see the typical signs of nystagmus, clockwise for the left ear and anti-clockwise for the right ear, which reverses on sitting up. There will be a latency, duration less than 40 seconds, and it is fatigable. So you do find it. What do? Go ahead and do your maneuvers. Of course, I'm not going to go into the maneuvers because somebody else will be dealing with it, and it's beyond the constraints of the. I have the constraint of the time to go into that. So whichever is your preferred maneuver, go ahead with it. Do it. And if the patient is doing well with that, fine, good for you, good for the patient. If the patient comes back, then you may repeat the maneuver, and that should do well. But if he keeps coming again and again, you think about your diagnosis. At the same time, we have to even think about the otolithic vertigo. What is this otolithic vertigo? I call it the post-BPPV syndrome. It is what the patient feels after you have done the liberatory maneuver correctly. Patient has that slight, walking in the clouds kind of a feeling, the lightheadedness, which remains for some time. So what the patient feels, that he doesn't realize that the rotatory part is gone, but the patient still feels a little unsteady and all. So he says, I'm still having vertigo. So we have to take that also into account. So it could be just otolithic vertigo post-maneuver. Then for the horizontal canal BPPV, we do the macular Paganini test. In canalolithiasis, you'll see the typical geotropic nystagmus. The stronger side is the affected ear. Shorter latency, but lasts longer than that of the posterior canal. And here you go ahead with your barbecue maneuver, or the Manuki's position, or the Guffoni's maneuver, whichever you are comfortable with. Now, what is atypical horizontal canal BPPV? Where you get the apogeotropic type of a nystagmus, and it is attributed to the cupulolithiasis. These are the cases where the nystagmus lasts for a longer period, and it is a little more difficult to treat. These are the patients who may come with, again and again. And these are the patients where you have to think twice about your diagnosis as well, because it is apogeotropic. We were taught again and again in the past that apogeotropic could be of a central origin. So we have to think about it. But of course, there's no harm in going ahead with the maneuver at that time. Now, if we are a little confused between whether this is a migraine attack and the patient is having this, nystagmus, or is it the BPPV? It is positional, but what is it? There may be ways and means of differentiating between the two. Because in migraine, even if it's a horizontal nystagmus, it would be present in any of the head positions, lying down, sitting up, anytime. And it will not be actually aligned to any particular canal. Whereas in BPPV, we know that how the features are of the nystagmus, always aligned to a particular canal. And one more thing which differentiates is the episodes of migraine. They are also frequent, but they are at a time short-lived. They are not over a span of days. BPPV, when patient comes, yes, he may have repeat episodes, but not at within a short period. But that episodes which are there, though they are of short time at that time, but they are over a span of days. So that is something which could be helpful. So if you have symptoms, if the patient is having positional vertigo, but there is no nystagmus, then you can think of vestibular migraine. So the protocol could be that first do the requisite liberatory maneuvers. If it is BPPV, it will respond. If it doesn't, you repeat the maneuver, doesn't respond, then you think of, okay, vestibular migraine. Then there is no harm in giving a therapeutic trial with the anti-migraine therapy. And what is this management? There's a three-pronged approach. One is reduction of the risk factors, abortive medications, and prophylactic pharmacotherapy. Now, reduction of the risk factors, we don't know how much the food is really involved, but of course there's a lot of literature which talks about the triggering factors being food, and we do know that patients also relate to that. And patients also like to be told that, okay, you avoid this, you avoid that, that goes well with the patients. So you talk to them about lifestyle modification, avoidance of stress, anxiety. I tell them to do this meditation, yoga, they like to hear about all that also, and they do it also. And they have to avoid certain foods, like red wine, fermented foods, aerated drinks, cheese, etc., for at least 6 weeks. And if there is a symptom-free period, yeah, I'm just done. Yeah, symptom-free period for 6 weeks, then good. Then there's nothing more to be done. If not, yes, you have to think of the pharmacotherapy. The abortive medications, like the triptans used for headache in migraine, are not effective in vertiginous migraine. So prophylactic pharmacotherapy, which we could find effective in our patients with vestibular migraine, would be topiramate, propranolol. Why I've highlighted is this is what I usually use. But the dosage, frequency, how much time to use, could be decided by the side effects and the frequency of the attacks as well. What is recommended that these drugs to be given for 1 year as prophylactic treatment. And after that, you discontinue, repeat if there is a issue again. Second line of treatment, we don't know whether it's really effective. We used to use flunarizine a lot earlier, but not now. And the role of magnesium, Dr. Shantanu elaborated on it yesterday. So they have found that it is beneficial in vestibular migraine, though I have not used it. If BPPV is recommended, we are talking of BPPV separately here. Yes, vitamin D supplementation is also being recommended. I recommend a vestibular rehabilitation for most of these patients who come with migrainous vertigo, with the idea that it gives a sense of well-being to the patient. Patient feels confident also. And of course, if there is a vestibular decompensation, it would help in the compensation. So keynotes are, or the take-home messages, migraine and BPPV may coexist. Migrainous vertigo may mimic BPPV, and with BPPV, if not responding to your maneuvers, consider migraine as one of the diagnoses, and there you can have a therapeutic trial with the anti-migraine drugs. I'm not going into the details of treatment of orthostatic hypotension because that becomes another field itself. So I end with this quote from Ayn Rand: a desire supposes the possibility of action to achieve it, and action presupposes a goal which is worth achieving. So thank you one and all for your kind attention.